Morning, Corey.
Morning, Ron. It's been a while.
It has been a while. You can tell that the weather has changed here.
Yeah, leaves are falling. It's comfortable. There's actually blue in the sky.
Yeah, no, that's the first for quite a while.
It's very nice.
Yeah, all that smoke. I'm still having trouble with my lungs, I think.
Yeah, my poor truck got it washed after the first round and thought, oh, we're done, and then happened again, and it was all covered again. Now I got to go wash it again.
You know what? Karen just read something about that. Do not just wash your car with a hose to get the dust off, the ash off. Turns into lye. So I hope your paint job's okay. Sorry, don't look like I don't mean to bear bad news here.
No. Just take the pressure washer to it and get it all off.
Yeah, I'm sure that works. But anyway, so what are we going to talk about today?
Well, there's been a lot of changes happening, and I think the topic of remote workers is an important one. I know there's been a lot of conversations around it, but there's always a slightly different perspective. I think between your experiences and mine, we can kind of improve on that a little bit.
Well, I know it's a different challenge for most managers. I just talking to a manager of a pretty good-sized company here lately that they all went into the office and ran a pretty good-sized group. High-tech guy, knows how to interconnect and use whatever tools are available, between the head shed and every other place.
So technology is not
technology is definitely not the issue. So the last time I talked to him, I said, how is that going? I really am interested. I've always been interested in how do you manage people outside in the hinterlands, they're not in the office. And he said, I've got a hell of a problem. I'm not meeting my schedules. And I thought, now this guy's pretty good at what he does. It's a little surprising, and I said, what's the problem? He said, well, I have virtual meetings and people show up, they don't have their homework done, the team doesn't know how to talk in a meeting together because they're just not used to the virtual concepts of running a meeting. And I started getting into it with him, but I didn't get too far. It didn't sound like he wanted to talk about it much. So
the wound was still fresh.
Yeah, and my last question of him I need to ask is, did anybody train you ahead of time to do that? Now, this is a big company. You would think that before they said, don't come in the office,
not in this environment.
Not in this, this environment with the virus, we want to keep everybody safe, work offline, and I would assume, but we know what that word means, not a good one, that this company would have had all their managers come in and train them on how to manage their people that are off-site, especially if they came into the office every day beforehand. And I'm just kind of doubted. He didn't indicate that he had any training. So, since then, it was about a week ago, since then I've been thinking about all the things that, if I had that problem, what would I be doing to make sure that I didn't lose any productivity or morale or teamwork or anything just because people were working from their homes?
Well, I think it's one of the biggest problems when you're dealing with that situation is whether or not you have the ability and the time to recognize that there's a problem.
Right.
Other than my production isn't where it should be, I need to figure out that problem.
Yeah.
Instead of realizing, okay, well, maybe the environment in which we're working in, we don't have it done quite right. We don't have it geared in quite right. Right? How do you carry culture across virtually?
See, I think that's one of the biggest issues. How do you carry that culture and keep up that teamwork that's tied to the culture? The values and, keeping people mindful of the mission. And, I must admit, I was an HR person, and when my company shut down on me in Sacramento, I thought, well, I'm going to be a consultant. and I'm going to work from home. And I'm pretty disciplined. I know you are, but I can get up and I put a suit on every day just to keep that feeling of, 8 o'clock, I'm at my desk, I'm doing these things. But I tell you, I got distracted all day long.
Huh?
Wife, cat, postman knocking on the door. And I know I wasn't as productive. So it was a concern of mine when my companies, that I joined after that were, letting people work from home. And I thought, how do they do that? I'm still a little mystified about that.
So I've been, I guess you could call it a remote worker for about 12 years. And absolutely, it's really easy to get distracted if you don't have goals that are measured and tracked, if you feel like you're isolated, if you don't feel like you're part of the team. It's very easy to think, well, I'm out here on an island all by myself.
Right.
And as long as I do what I believe is the minimum, then I'm going to be left alone. And we've had lots of conversations,
Yeah.
which has been kind of funny. And some of it even revolves around some of the new school schedules. It's like, how can the school schedules be so much shorter than they were before and still accomplish the same set of requirements?
Right.
It's like, well, have you thought about that?
Hmm.
People are no longer under that same guidance, that same schedule, and when you don't have that, the environment changes. And when we look at remote workers, when it's like you're measured, some companies will say you have to log in at this time, you have to log out at that time, and they'll track that. So that'll be what they measure, right? And then I know of individuals who will log in and log out, and every 20 or 30 minutes they'll get up from their desk and they'll walk away for about 20, 30 minutes, come back, move the mouse, go back, so
Yeah.
the computer never goes to sleep, but they're still logged in. And as long as things are done in a timely manner, no idea that something is not what they would have expected if they had been in the office.
Yeah, and another thing is, and I know if you have people inside or outside, you should have goals, and you should have clear objectives, and you should be able to measure when assignment is done and that type of thing, and that should be all set up, especially with people that are working on the outside, and those expectations should be known very clearly. The one question I always have now, exempt employees and non-exempt employees.
Huh?
So I learned early on that exempt employee, their work is never done. I don't know if you were in that environment, but I know that I had projects I had to do on time and work assignments and things my boss gave me, but there was always this other work, like establishing plans for this scenario or meeting with other people to come up with a solution, write a procedure. An exempt employee, I think that's their definition, is that you just have continual work.
There's always something to do.
There's always something to do because you can get your work done, but then you should be thinking about how you can do it better or come up with a better solution or a better system or a new policy.
I'll challenge that one just a little bit.
Do it.
Just because a lot of people don't like challenge. They don't like being challenged.
That's true.
And they don't like challenges. They don't like change. So while, yes, I agree in principle, absolutely, you should always be looking for ways to improve things. I don't know if that's necessarily what the culture would be.
Right. I just mean I know my wife had a job that she had clear measurables. It was a title company business. So, you get done with so many, whatever they do, right, of titles,
Right.
and,
Yep.
the real estate business, and you go home. And I used to say, what are you doing home so early? And she would say, oh, I got my work done. And I would sit there and say, you're the manager of the office and your work is done? I never had that concept of my work done.
Yeah.
So,
not with the word manager tacked to your title.
no. So, I don't know. I think that's, all I know is that's a challenge. And that it becomes, I think everything about work and getting work done, culture and everything about it, I think the challenge that a manager has is it doubles or triples, whatever, when people are working on the outside. You can't walk down the hall.
I was thinking about
You know?
that. Yeah, you can't have those. I'm just going to walk down the hall and talk to you. You can't have those water cooler conversations. as they're
Exactly.
called. Those opportunities for those impromptu conversations to solve things.
I think that's the word, impromptu. Exactly.
And so now you have to find a way how to do that, and you have to promote that as a culture, right? It's I do this with people now. People will send me an email with a question, and I'm like, all right, here's my Zoom info. Let's start talking about this now. Let's not schedule this out for a week, because whatever thoughts and momentums and emotions you're having and feeling now aren't going to last. So let's look at things now. And if you can't have that as part of your culture, is to implement that same thing, that believe it or not is a powerful management tool.
I like what you're saying about culture. So, again, my buddy, who all of a sudden his employees are out in the hinterlands, he's got to manage them that way. Well, before that happened, the thought process say, okay, what is the culture that I want to create, adjust to, or whatever that terminology would be, is I've got a culture that I've got to make sure happens out there. I would want to sit down with my employees, maybe even individual phone calls or whatever, to say, how do we make this happen? You used to be able to walk into my office anytime and we could solve a problem on the spot. How do we want to work together now? I think it's just imperative that the culture is established before the new remote work site is set up. You've got to be able to establish all these, I hate the word rules, guidelines,
Yeah.
guidelines on how we're going to get work done, how are we going to communicate now. Expectations. How do we, myself as a manager, I've got to figure out, how do I make sure that I pass down information that I get all the time to my people so that they're in on the know?
Right. They're not on that island.
They're, like you said before,
Yep.
I'm on that island. And I will admit, I've admitted to this before. I kind of like that island.
Sometimes it's nice.
It's kind of nice
It
to,
does get lonely.
but it gets lonely. But then
Yeah.
there's upsides, You don't have to play the office politics. There's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
There are upsides. But somehow you've got to keep that communication lines going, not just about work assignments. It's got to make sure you keep that rapport up with your people.
Absolutely. You've got to be able to have those conversations where it's like, we used to get together in the office when I had an office, or would go into an office, and first thing in the morning, nobody ever works first thing in the morning. It's always, I'm going to go to the break room, I'm going to get my coffee, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to get set up, then I'm going to walk around and talk to everybody and see, what's going on, how was their weekend, or
Right.
did something
Right.
happen overnight, or is everything, and just have those conversations. We used to have conversations about video games first thing in
Oh,
the
yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
And it just, you lose that when you don't have that ability to do it. It's almost where you need to start your work day. I haven't done this, but I'm sitting here thinking it's like, it would be kind of neat, knowing that most people virtually are probably still at least in their pajamas or halfway in,
Yeah,
in their
exactly.
pajamas. And to have a first meeting with everybody in their pajamas, as weird as that kind of sounds, but people are less tense when they're relaxed. So
You can have a pajama party every morning.
I know, right? And you can sit and talk about what's going on. Let's see if we start a trend with that one, or if we get some interesting comments. But
I'm telling you, I like it. I'd tell you this. I think that a lot of guys would have a little problem with the phone. I don't know about you, but I'm used to, I call some guy and say, hey, you want to go fishing this morning? Yeah. Okay, meet me at the dock at 8 o'clock. Okay, bye. That's the extent of a phone call with a guy I know. I just think a lot of guys don't get on the phone to socialize. That, well, how's it going? Yeah, maybe they are, but I'm not used to that. My son, we talk for an hour every Sunday because he loves to talk to me for an hour every Sunday. Probably do it every day if he could. But I think a lot of people aren't phone people.
No.
And I like it in the office. I like to be able to go out and check people's pulse and, hey, are you sick today? How are you? You're not looking too well. Oh, goodness gracious, what happened last night? Just help start that day, make them see you as a human being.
And you see them that way.
And you see them that way, and you treat them that way so they know that you got their back, they got your back. You talk a little bit about what their day, what's your plans for today, and well, I'm going to get this done over here. I'm used to that. I love that one-on-one and just checking in with people. And I think it makes a big difference. So I think our pajama party is a good idea. I really do. Because, otherwise you'd be calling up every one of your people. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, on the phone, you have no idea what they're doing.
You never know what they're doing, and they're sitting there, at the breakfast table or something. Yeah. So you've got to come up with a new way of doing business and establish that and get that agreement with each person and make them comfortable with it. You don't make people do anything, but
you have to make the environment comfortable.
You make the environment comfortable for them.
Through culture, through engagement.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think you need to set up all the monitoring controls. I need this due date to get this in, all those things. But the other thing I think that's really conducive to making it work is trust. When the cat's away, the mice will play. That's an old saying,
If we could spell that with less letters, that'd be a 4-letter word.
Yeah, right. But how do you, set up that you trust people until you can't trust them anymore or something,
Trust but verify. That's the one that I like to use.
Yeah, I do. I like that.
I'll trust you and I'll believe you until you give me a reason not to.
Yeah.
And how do I trust but verify? Well, okay. So we have systems that track when you log in and log out. We set up systems to know what you're doing and that you're producing at the level in which we need. Not necessarily watching everything that you do.
Right.
I just need to know that production or whatever the case is, whatever our measurable goal is being met.
A lot of managers, when you're talking, I was thinking about this, a lot of managers have to change their style. I've known a lot of hands-on managers that just over-manage down to the gnat's eyeball, about, checking on you all the time. And I don't think that's a good style in any case, but it's certainly not going to work when you have somebody not present every day. You can't micromanage people, especially in that environment. So,
you drive yourself nuts constantly.
Yeah, you couldn't do it.
You've got to watch, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. Constantly calling and checking in. How can you yourself be productive doing what you need to do if you're constantly monitoring a group of other people?
And that's why, I thought about it. I had put together a little training program quite a while ago on this topic. Not very extensive, nothing to fit today's situation. But I go back to my buddy and think, in this large company, there should be an extensive management training program in order to do this successfully. In fact, the tools probably should be almost standardized. You know, if we're going to manage these people, let's use this tool, these
Right.
technical tools,
Yep.
so we have uniformity, and we can even have a place where all the productivity comes into one spot, a dashboard, so we can look at the productivity at every level without micromanaging.
I think under normal circumstances, you are 100% right. I think what the environment we're in now, I think everybody got thrown into it.
Yeah.
And they didn't have an opportunity to create these plans and to figure out what's this going to look like. Right? Most companies will start small. They'll start with pilots. Okay, let's look at what remote work looks like.
Right.
Let's try this. Okay, what problems? I mean, there's an intentional process to go through to add it. But when you're thrown into it, the process is not to figure out if it's working or not. The process is to figure out is can we still operate or not.
Yeah, exactly.
And your yardsticks, your goals, your measurements are completely different in that environment. And at some point, you have to stop and go, okay, we've transitioned. Now let's go back and start this over the right way and start solving the problems that we had.
Yeah.
I remember, weird saying this, months ago when this whole thing started, that was a lot of the conversations that we were having. It's like, okay, so this happened, you adjusted, now you had to rapidly adjust, but now you need to go back.
Mm-hmm.
As weird as it sounds, you need to go back and figure out what you would do the right way to put you in this situation and adjust accordingly. How does your remote worker plan look like?
Right.
We were doing conversations on disaster preparedness for businesses, and one of the conversations was what happens if you lose your facility, right? Well, under normal, I mean, so what happens if your building catches on fire,
Right.
and you no longer now have a location to work? What would you do? How would you stay in operation? Well, that same process is the exact same process we had to go through for this.
Sure.
We've lost our ability to work in the facility that we were used to. How do we implement that? How do we stand it up? Do we have information only available to us in that physical facility? How do I handle that? How do I handle a loss of that? And if you don't go back and look at that, it's the new, is that the new Engine 52? I think that's a new Engine 52.
I don't know, but I wonder what it's about. Can I call home?
And you create that plan for it. And I don't want to say it's the good thing, but the thing about this is now you get to go backwards and look at what worked and what didn't work and create this for the next time.
Well, it's something that's missing a lot in a lot of companies. Once they get over some panic, then they move on to the next one. And I'm usually the guy in the back in the meeting room going, hey, why don't we write down our solutions to how we got here and we'll go through this struggle so when something like this happens again, we're prepared.
I think this is a good conversation for another time.
It is. It is.
So, remote workers.
Remote workers, what a challenge.
Culture.
Communication. Virtual communication.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a big subject, and there's solutions.
Yep.
There has to be good solutions in the environment we are in today. And I read a lot of articles lately that said we're probably in a new time when people are saying, no, I want to stay home from now on.
Their businesses were completely converting to it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, especially in the Bay Area, are saying, yeah, you need to move because of property values. You need to move to Arkansas and get out of this wonderful state. We'll let you do it.
Yep.
We don't want to lose you. So, yeah, I think it's we're the new generation, so
Yep, I agree.
time to understand that and plan for it.
Yep.
Well,
All right.
all right.
Well, thank you for everybody who's watching us live, and thank you for those of us who are watching us recording. So thank you from Ron and I. We will see you guys next time. We don't know what it sounds like we're going to talk about, but
We'll come up with something.
Sounds
It's never-ending topics, Corey.
absolutely.
Right.
So we will see everybody next time.
All
That's
right.
Ron.
Okay, I'm Ron. He's Corey.